The silk sheets whispered secrets as Naomi pressed her face against Jin-Soo's bare chest, her tears soaking into his skin. His fingers traced slow circles down her spine, speaking a language they'd perfected over 3 years of marriage, a language that needed no words. Outside their penthouse bedroom, snow fell on Chicago like confetti, but inside, the world had stopped existing except for the two of them and their shared grief. "I can't bury my son tomorrow," Naomi whispered, her voice breaking on the last word. "I can't do it, Jean." His arms tightened around her, pulling her impossibly closer. When he spoke, his accented English was rough with emotion. "Then we don't go. We stay here. Just like this. Forever." She lifted her head, her dark eyes meeting his. Even through her pain, she could see the rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior, the fury he was containing for her sake. Jin-Soo Kim didn't just love her, he worshipped her, and watching her suffer was slowly killing him. "You know we have to," she said softly, reaching up to touch his face. "Marcus deserves that much from me. From us." Before he could respond, she kissed him with the desperation of a woman trying to forget, and he met her need with his own, rolling her beneath him as the first light of dawn crept through the windows. "Hey beautiful souls, before we dive deep into today's emotional roller coaster, I want to wish each and every one of you a blessed Christmas season filled with love, joy, and all the warmth your hearts can hold. Now, you already know we're about to serve you premium content, so get comfortable, maybe grab some tissues because this story is going to take you on a journey. Welcome back to the Afro-Korean family, and if you're new here, you're in for a treat. Let's get into this story." 24 hours later, Naomi stood in front of her mirror, her hands shaking as she tried to zip up her black dress. The intimate sanctuary she'd shared with Jin-Soo felt like a distant dream now, replaced by the harsh reality of burying her 22-year-old son. Marcus. Her baby. Gone in a senseless drive-by shooting that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Jin-Soo appeared behind her, his reflection devastating in a custom black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Without a word, he took over the zipper, his touch gentle despite the violence he was capable of. When he finished, he placed a single kiss on the back of her neck. "My men are positioned at every corner of the cemetery," he said quietly. "Security is absolute. No one will disturb the service." She turned to face him. "Jean, I know you're used to controlling everything, but this is a funeral, not a business deal. We don't need an army." Something flickered in his dark eyes, something that looked almost like pity, but he simply nodded. "As you wish. I'll keep them minimal. Invisible." If she hadn't been drowning in grief, she might have questioned the specific way he phrased that, the careful parsing of his promise. But Naomi was beyond questioning anything. She just needed to get through the next few hours. The cemetery was a study in winter bleakness, bare trees reaching toward a gray sky like skeletal hands. Despite her request, Naomi noticed the men in dark suits positioned at strategic points, Jin-Soo's people, watching everything with the intensity of trained predators. She wanted to be annoyed, but the truth was, their presence made her feel safer. The service was small. Her sister Jasmine, a few of Marcus's friends from college, some neighbors from the old neighborhood before she'd met Jin-Soo, and her entire life had transformed into something unrecognizable. Pastor Williams's words washed over her like white noise, meaningless sounds that couldn't touch the howling void inside her chest. Jin-Soo stood beside her like a statue carved from marble, his hand clasped firmly around hers. She knew people were staring. They always stared. The successful black woman and her impossibly handsome, impossibly dangerous Korean husband who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Let them stare. She was past caring about anything except the casket being lowered into frozen ground. That's when she heard the voice. "Naomi Davis?" She turned, confused. She hadn't been Naomi Davis in 3 years. She was Naomi Kim now. But the confusion evaporated when she saw the white police officer approaching, his hand resting casually on his belt, too close to his weapon. I'm Officer Brennan, Chicago PD. I need you to come with me for questioning. The entire cemetery seemed to hold its breath. Jin-Soo's hand tightened on hers, not releasing her, and she felt the temperature drop as his men shifted, reading the change in their boss's energy. Questioning. Naomi's voice came out strangled. My son. I'm burying my son. Ma'am, we have reason to believe you have information about the shooting that killed Marcus Davis. We need you to come to the station. Jasmine stepped forward, her face twisted with disbelief. Are you serious right now? Her son is literally being lowered into the ground and you want to question her? She's the victim here. Officer Brennan's eyes flickered to Jasmine, then back to Naomi, and she saw something ugly in his gaze. Something she'd seen too many times before in her life, despite all her success, despite her degrees and her business and her powerful husband. She saw hatred dressed up as authority. Ma'am, I can do this easy or I can do it hard. Your choice. She's not going anywhere. Jin-Soo's voice was soft, almost gentle, which anyone who knew him would recognize as the most dangerous sound in the world. My wife is burying her son. Whatever questions you have can wait. Brennan's lip curled as he took in Jin-Soo for the first time, really looked at him. And you are? Her husband. Jin-Soo Kim. Well, Mr. Kim, this is police business. I suggest you step back and let me do my job before I arrest you for obstruction. That's when Brennan made his first critical mistake. He reached for Naomi's arm. He didn't grab her roughly. He didn't need to. The simple act of his hand closing around her bicep, pulling her away from her son's graveside, away from Jin-Soo, was violence enough. Get your hands off her. Jin-Soo's voice had gone arctic, each word enunciated with crystal clarity. Or what? Brennan sneered, and Naomi saw it then, the real reason for this performance. This wasn't about Marcus's murder. This was about power. About putting her in her place. About reminding her that no matter how much money she had, no matter who she married, she was still just a black woman who could be touched, could be taken, could be controlled. You're making a mistake, she said quietly, looking at Brennan with something almost like pity. The only mistake here is you thinking you're above the law. He pulled handcuffs from his belt. Naomi Davis, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and suspicion of accessory after the fact to murder. The world tilted. Naomi heard Jasmine screaming, heard the pastor's shocked protest, heard Marcus's friends shouting, but it all seemed to come from very far away. She felt the metal close around her wrists, felt Brennan's satisfaction as he paraded her away from her son's grave like a trophy. She also felt Jin-Soo's absolute stillness behind her, and she knew with bone-deep certainty that Officer Brennan had just signed his own death warrant. Jean, she called over her shoulder, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Don't do anything. Please. I'll be fine. His eyes met hers across the distance, and she saw everything there. The rage. The promise. The love that would burn down the world for her. I'll have you out in an hour, he said, and it wasn't a comfort. It was a vow. As Brennan pushed her toward his squad car, she caught sight of one of Jin-Soo's men on his phone, another already walking toward a black Mercedes, the whole machine of her husband's empire activating like a sleeping dragon opening its eyes. The ride to the police station was silent except for Brennan's satisfied breathing. He kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, and Naomi wondered what he saw. Did he see a grieving mother? Or just another black woman he could brutalize with impunity? At the station, he paraded her through the building, still in handcuffs, past officers who looked away uncomfortably, past citizens who stared with that horrible mixture of curiosity and judgment. He was making a show of it, she realized. This was about humiliation. They put her in an interrogation room, a gray box that smelled like fear and industrial cleaner. The handcuffs came off, leaving red marks around her wrists. Brennan sat across from her, another officer, a tired-looking black man named Patterson, standing in the corner looking deeply uncomfortable. So, Naomi, Brennan began, not offering her water, not offering her a phone call, not offering her anything. Want to tell me about your son's extracurricular activities? Marcus was a college student. He was studying engineering. He was shot at a gas station. Engineering, right? Brennan leaned back, smirking. Funny how many engineering students end up dead in the hood. Maybe he was engineering something else. Drugs? Guns? The words hit her like physical blows. My son wasn't involved in anything illegal. See, I find that hard to believe. Young black man, expensive clothes, nice car, living in a penthouse. Where was all that money coming from? From me, Naomi said, her voice tight. I own 3 successful restaurants. My husband owns multiple legitimate businesses. Marcus wanted for nothing because we provided for him. Your husband. Brennan's eyes gleamed. Jin-Soo Kim. Want to tell me about him? And there it was. This wasn't about Marcus at all. This was about Jin-Soo. I want a lawyer, Naomi said quietly. Oh, you want a lawyer now? Funny how quick you are to lawyer up. Innocent people don't usually need lawyers right away. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. Brennan, she asked for a lawyer. We need to stop. Shut up, Patterson. I'm conducting an interview. An interrogation, Naomi corrected, meeting Brennan's eyes. And I'm done talking. Get me a lawyer or charge me. Those are your only options. Brennan's face flushed red. He opened his mouth to respond when the door burst open and a man in an expensive suit walked in, his face already set in lines of professional fury. I'm Robert Chin, Mrs. Kim's attorney. This interview is over. Now. If you're loving this drama already, and I know you are, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss where this story is going. Drop a like if you're Team Naomi and Jin-Soo, and comment below telling me what you think is about to happen, because things are about to get real. Robert Chen was one of the most expensive defense attorneys in Chicago, and he'd clearly been briefed on everything because his first words after getting Naomi alone were, Jin-Soo is handling this. Are you hurt? Did they touch you inappropriately? I'm fine, Naomi said, though she was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving her hollow. I just want to go home. I need to. I didn't get to say goodbye. They took me before I could say goodbye to Marcus. Chen's expression softened fractionally. I understand, Mrs. Kim. We're going to get you out of here immediately. They have no cause to hold you, no evidence of anything. This arrest was unlawful, and they're going to pay for it. Where's Jin-Soo? Something flickered across Chen's face. He's managing the situation. He asked me to get you released and take you home. He'll meet you there. Which meant Jin-Soo was currently doing something that required plausible deniability, and Naomi felt a chill run down her spine. It took another 2 hours, 2 hours of bureaucratic nonsense and deliberate delays, before they finally released her. Chen walked her out through a side entrance where a car was waiting, not the flashy vehicles Jin-Soo usually sent, but a nondescript sedan with tinted windows. The driver was one of Jin-Soo's inner circle, a Korean man named Sung who'd been with him since before he'd met Naomi. He nodded respectfully as she got in, but didn't speak. The silence was heavy with unspoken knowledge. When they pulled up to the penthouse, Jin-Soo was waiting in the private elevator, and the moment she saw him, Naomi broke. She fell into his arms and sobbed, 3 years of being the strong woman, the successful business owner, the perfect wife, all of it dissolving into the simple truth that she was a mother who'd lost her child and hadn't even been allowed to properly say goodbye. He carried her inside, his strength effortless, and for a while, there were no words. He just held her on the couch, stroking her hair, his own tears silent on his face. Tell me you didn't kill him, she finally whispered. Tell me Officer Brennan is still alive. He's alive, Jin-Soo said, and she could hear the restraint it took to say those words. For now. But Naomi, I need you to listen to me. This wasn't random. This was planned. She pulled back to look at him. What do you mean? Officer Michael Brennan has been on the Chicago PD for 15 years. He's been investigated twice for excessive force, both times involving black women. Both investigations were dropped due to lack of evidence. He's also on the payroll of the Volkov family. The Volkovs. Naomi knew that name. They were Jin-Soo's rivals, a Russian crime family that had been trying to move into his territory for the past year. This was a message, Jin-Soo continued, his voice hardening. They couldn't touch me directly, so they went after you. They used Marcus's death as an opportunity to humiliate you, to show me that even my wife isn't safe from their reach. Oh God! Naomi's mind reeled. Marcus, was Marcus? No. Jin-Soo's hands framed her face, forcing her to look at him. No, baby. Marcus's death was random, tragic, meaningless violence. But Brennan being the one to arrest you today, at the funeral, that was orchestrated. The Volkovs found out about the service and saw an opportunity. Rage started to burn through the grief, hot and clarifying. So what happens now? Jin-Soo's smile was terrible to behold. Now. Now I show them what happens when someone touches what's mine. But first, we're going to do this the legal way. We're going to destroy Officer Brennan through the system, publicly, brutally. And then. His eyes went cold. Then I'm going to have a conversation with Viktor Volkov about boundaries. Over the next week, Naomi watched her husband orchestrate a masterpiece of revenge. It started with the lawsuit, filed by Robert Chen, $18 million in damages for unlawful arrest, emotional distress, violation of civil rights, and a dozen other charges. The number itself was strategic, high enough to make headlines but not so astronomical that it seemed frivolous. But the lawsuit was just the opening move. Jin-Soo's people went to work with surgical precision. Within 48 hours, the media had the story. Grieving mother arrested at son's funeral by corrupt cop. The optics were devastating. Video footage appeared, recorded by one of Marcus's friends, showing Brennan handcuffing Naomi at the graveside, showing her tears, showing the coffin still suspended over the open earth. The city erupted. Naomi watched from the safety of the penthouse as protests formed outside the police station. Civil rights leaders called press conferences. The two previous women who'd accused Brennan of excessive force suddenly had new attorneys, expensive ones that Jin-Soo was clearly paying for, and they were filing their own lawsuits. The police department tried to get ahead of the story, suspending Brennan pending investigation, but it was too late. The narrative had already been written. And then Jin-Soo's people found the connection to the Volkovs. Financial records, phone calls, meetings, all of it documented and delivered to both the FBI and the media simultaneously. Officer Michael Brennan wasn't just a racist cop with a badge, he was a corrupt racist cop working for the Russian Mafia. The fallout was nuclear. Naomi sat next to Jin-Soo on the couch, watching the news coverage, his arm around her shoulders. On the screen, Brennan was being arrested, handcuffed and perp-walked past cameras, the same humiliation he'd inflicted on her now reflected back 1,000-fold. How does it feel? Jin-Soo asked softly. She thought about it, really examined her emotions. She still hurt. Marcus was still gone. Nothing would bring him back. But watching his killer brought to justice, watching the man who degraded her at her lowest moment face his own reckoning. It feels like breathing, she admitted. Like maybe I can breathe again. He kissed her temple. Good. Because we're not done yet. The Volkovs. The Volkovs, he confirmed. But that's my business, not yours. I need you to focus on healing, on taking care of yourself. She turned to look at him, really look at him. Her husband. The man who'd transformed from a dangerous stranger into the love of her life. The man who'd loved her son like his own, who'd paid for Marcus's school, who'd taught him to drive, who'd cried at his funeral until she'd pulled him away from the grave. "I want to be there," she said. "When you face them. I want them to see what they tried to destroy and know they failed." Jin-soo studied her face for a long moment. "It won't be pretty. What I do, who I am in that world, it's not the man you married." "You're always the man I married," Naomi said firmly. "All of you. The parts that kiss me softly and the parts that are capable of terrible things. I knew who you were when I said yes. I'm not afraid of you, Jin-soo. I'm afraid of losing you." Something shifted in his expression, a wall coming down. "You could never lose me. I was yours the moment I saw you. Do you remember?" She smiled despite everything. "The restaurant. You came in with your men, all intimidating and powerful, and you ordered in Korean even though the menu was in English. I was testing you," he admitted. "Seeing if you'd hired Korean staff just for show or if you actually cared about authenticity. And then you responded in perfect Korean and I thought, I'm going to marry this woman. It was our second date when you told me what you really did," Naomi continued, the memory warm despite its complications. "You gave me an out. Told me I should run. You laughed in my face. Because you clearly didn't know who you were dealing with. I grew up on the South Side, Jean. I knew men like you my whole life. Different faces, same danger. But you." She touched his face. "You were dangerous, but never to me. Never to the people you loved." He caught her hand, kissing her palm. "I'm going to make them pay for touching you. For using Marcus's death as a weapon against us. Viktor Volkov thinks he can hide behind his police connections, thinks he can wage war through proxies. He's about to learn otherwise." The meeting was set for Neutral Ground, an upscale restaurant that Jin-soo owned through enough shell corporations to make it officially unconnected. Naomi dressed carefully, choosing a white dress that was almost bridal in its elegance, a deliberate contrast to the funeral black she'd been wearing. She was done mourning in public. Her grief was her own now, something she carried privately, and what she wanted the Volkovs to see was her strength. Jin-soo's men swept the restaurant 3 times before they arrived. When Naomi walked in on her husband's arm, she felt the weight of eyes on them, the dangerous men positioned around the room, Korean on one side, Russian on the other, enough firepower present to start a small war. Viktor Volkov stood when they approached, a tall man with pale eyes and a smile that never reached them. "Mr. Kim. And this must be the famous Mrs. Kim. My condolences on your loss." The words were perfectly polite and utterly insincere. Naomi met his gaze without flinching. "Save your condolences," Jin-soo said coldly. "We're not here for pleasantries." They sat, the 4 of them, Viktor with his second-in-command, a brutal-looking man named Alexei, Jin-soo and Naomi presenting a united front. "You made a mistake," Jin-soo began without preamble. "You involved my family in our business. That's unacceptable." Viktor shrugged. "I don't know what you're referring to. If one of your associates had a problem with the police, that's hardly my concern." "Officer Michael Brennan has been very talkative," Jin-soo said softly. "Facing federal charges tends to make men reconsider their loyalties. He's given the FBI a very detailed account of his relationship with your organization. But more importantly, he's confirmed that you ordered him to arrest my wife. At her son's funeral." Something flickered in Viktor's eyes. Concern. He'd underestimated how quickly Jin-soo could work, how thoroughly he could dismantle the connections. Even if that were true, it's hardly a capital offense. She was released. No harm done. Naomi laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. No harm done. You had me handcuffed and arrested while my son was being lowered into the ground. You used his death as a pawn in your territorial pissing match. No harm done. Victor's attention shifted to her fully for the first time, and she saw him reassess, saw him realize she wasn't just Jin-soo's pretty wife, she was a player in her own right. Mrs. Kim, surely you understand this is business. Nothing personal. You made it personal, she said quietly. And that's going to cost you everything. Right now, I need you to do something for me. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, if you're feeling all the emotions, hit that like button. And comment below, tell me, are we here for the revenge? Are we here for Jin-soo and Naomi's love? What are you most invested in? I want to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We bring you these premium stories every week. Don't miss out. Victor's smile turned sharp. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Jin-soo said. The lawsuit against Brennan is going to expose your entire police network in Chicago. The FBI is already moving. Your protection is gone. Your territory is forfeit. And if you ever think about touching my family again, I will erase the Volkov name from existence. Do you understand me? The tension in the room was suffocating. Alexei's hand moved toward his jacket, but before he could reach whatever weapon he was carrying, 3 red dots appeared on his chest, laser sights from Jin-soo's men positioned around the restaurant. Victor held up a hand, stopping Alexei. You've made your point. I haven't even started, Jin-soo said. The point will be made over the next 6 months as I dismantle everything you've built in this city. The point will be made when every shipment you have goes missing, when every politician you own suddenly finds their conscience, when every business you run dries up and dies. You wanted to send a message by humiliating my wife. Fine. Consider this my response. I'm going to destroy you so thoroughly that when people tell stories about this moment, other men will learn never to make the same mistake. Victor's face had gone pale. I underestimated you. You underestimated her, Jin-soo corrected, looking at Naomi with something like reverence. You thought she was my weakness. She's my strength. Touching her didn't make me vulnerable, it removed the last restraint I had on my temper. You should have left her alone. Naomi reached across the table, her movement so unexpected that Alexei actually flinched. She picked up Victor's glass of vodka and took a sip, her eyes never leaving his. I'm going to watch you fall, she said conversationally. Every step of the way. Every business that closes, every ally that abandons you, every piece of your empire that crumbles. I'm going to be there, watching, and I'm going to think about my son. About the funeral I didn't get to finish. About the goodbye I didn't get to say because your corrupt cop dragged me away in handcuffs. And it's going to feel good. She set the glass down and stood, Jin-soo rising with her. They walked out together, leaving Viktor Volkov sitting in stunned silence, and for the first time since Marcus's death, Naomi felt something other than grief. She felt powerful. In the car, Jin-soo pulled her into his arms. You were magnificent. I was angry. You were perfect. He kissed her, deep and possessive, the kiss of a man claiming his woman, reminding her that she was alive, they were alive, and they had each other. When we get home, I'm going to make love to my wife for hours. And then we're going to plan exactly how we're going to dismantle the Volkovs piece by piece. In that order? Naomi asked, breathless. Definitely in that order. Revenge can wait. You can't. The next months were a study in controlled chaos. True to his word, Jin-soo methodically destroyed the Volkov organization's presence in Chicago. But he was smart about it, working through legitimate channels wherever possible, using Naomi's lawsuit against Brennan as the wedge that opened up everything else. The trial was a media sensation. Naomi had to testify, had to relive that horrible day on the stand, but with Jin-soo sitting in the front row, his presence a constant reminder that she wasn't alone, she got through it. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They found in her favor on every count. $18 million in damages, plus the judge's scathing rebuke of the Chicago PD's practices. But the money was never the point. The point was the precedent, the message sent to every corrupt cop who thought they could abuse their power without consequence. Officer Michael Brennan was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for racketeering, corruption, and civil rights violations. The two women he'd previously assaulted both settled their lawsuits for undisclosed amounts that Naomi knew were substantial. More importantly, they got justice, got validation, got to see their abuser face consequences. As for the Volkovs, they didn't go down easily, but they went down. Victor was indicted on federal charges. Alexei disappeared one night and was never seen again, though Jin-Soo's carefully neutral expression when Naomi asked about it told her everything she needed to know. The organization fractured, its assets seized, its power broken. 6 months after Marcus's funeral, Naomi and Jin-Soo returned to the cemetery. It was spring now, and the ground that had been frozen and hostile was soft with new grass. They'd commissioned a beautiful headstone, black granite engraved with Marcus's name, his dates, and the words, "Beloved son, gone too soon, forever remembered." Naomi knelt in front of it, placing fresh flowers in the holder. Jin-Soo stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, his presence steady and grounding. "I'm sorry I didn't get to say goodbye that day," she whispered. "But I'm saying it now. I love you, Marcus. I'll always love you. And I promise, your death meant something. It exposed corruption. It brought down evil men. You made the world a little bit better, even in dying. I hope that counts for something." Jin-Soo knelt beside her, adding his own flowers. "I wish I'd had more time with you," he said quietly. "I wish I could have seen you graduate, get married, have kids of your own. But I'm honored I got to know you at all. You made your mother happy, and anyone who makes her happy is precious to me. Rest well, Marcus. We've got it from here." They stayed there for a long time, the powerful crime lord and the successful restaurateur, just two people grieving someone they loved. When they finally left, walking hand in hand back to the car, Naomi felt lighter. The grief would always be there, would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined every moment. She was learning to carry it, to make room for it alongside joy, alongside love, alongside her life with Jin-Soo. "What are you thinking about?" he asked as they drove through the city. "I'm thinking about that night we met," she said. 3 years ago. You walked into my restaurant like you owned the world. I was trying to impress you. It worked." She smiled. "I'm also thinking about how much has changed since then. How much we've survived together." "We can survive anything," Jin-Soo said with absolute certainty. "You and me against the world, remember? You and me against the world," she repeated. That night, in their penthouse bedroom, they came together with the intensity of people who'd faced the worst and survived. Jin-Soo made good on his promise from months ago, taking his time, relearning every inch of her body, reminding them both that they were alive, they were together, they were unbreakable. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Naomi said, "I want to start a foundation. In Marcus's name. For families who've lost children to violence. Legal help, counseling, whatever they need." Jin-Soo was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her skin. "That's perfect. I'll fund it. Whatever you need, it's yours." "I don't want dirty money," she said carefully. "I need this to be legitimate, clean. Then we'll use your money, the settlement from the lawsuit. 18 million can do a lot of good." She twisted to look at him. "Really? You'd be okay with that?" "Naomi, you could ask me for the moon and I'd figure out a way to pull it from the sky. If you want to turn your pain into purpose, if you want to make sure what happened to you never happens to another mother, then I'll support that with everything I have." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "I love you. I love you more." "Not possible. We could debate this all night," he murmured against her lips. "Or I could show you." "Show me," she breathed, and he did. The Marcus Davis Foundation launched 6 months later with a gala that drew media attention from across the country. The guest list was a fascinating mix of high society, civil rights leaders, and carefully vetted members of Jin-Soo's legitimate business empire. Naomi gave a speech that left half the room in tears, talking about her son, about justice, about the responsibility they all had to protect the vulnerable. And Jin-soo stood in the front row, his eyes never leaving her, his pride evident to everyone watching. After the gala, after the guests had left and they were finally alone, Naomi found him on the balcony of their penthouse, looking out over the city lights. "What are you thinking?" she asked, sliding her arms around him from behind. "I'm thinking that I'm the luckiest man alive," he said. "And I'm thinking that Marcus would be proud of you. Of what you're building in his name. I hope so." She rested her cheek against his back. "I hope wherever he is, he knows that his death wasn't meaningless. That it sparked change." Jin-soo turned in her arms, his hands framing her face. "He knows. And he knows his mother is the strongest, most incredible woman in the world. Sweet talker. Truth teller." He kissed her forehead. "I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Naomi's heart stuttered. They were already married, so it wasn't an engagement ring, but the velvet box suggested jewelry, something significant. She opened it and gasped. Inside was a pendant, a stunning piece of custom work in white gold. It showed two figures, clearly her and Marcus, embracing, with tiny diamonds creating the illusion of stars around them. "Jin-soo," she breathed. "It's beautiful. So you can carry him with you always," he said softly, taking the necklace and fastening it around her neck. "So he's close to your heart, where he belongs." The tears came then, but they were good tears, healing tears. She pulled Jin-soo close and held on tight, this man who'd loved her through the worst moments of her life, who'd sought justice for her, who'd honored her son's memory in every way possible. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For loving me, for loving Marcus, for being exactly who you are. Thank you for seeing past who I am to who I could be with you," he replied. "You made me better, Naomi. You made me want to be worthy of you." They stood there on the balcony as the city sparkled below them, two people who'd found each other against all odds, who'd survived grief and violence and betrayal, who'd come out stronger on the other side. Before we wrap up, I need you to tell me what you thought of this journey. Drop a comment below with your favorite moment from this story. Was it the courtroom justice? The confrontation with Victor? That intimate ending? I want to hear it all. And if you made it this far, you're definitely part of the Afro-Korean family, so make sure you're subscribed because we have more incredible stories coming your way. Hit that like button if this story gave you all the feels, and share it with someone who loves a good romance with a side of revenge. 2 years later. The foundation was thriving, having helped over 300 families navigate the aftermath of losing children to violence. The lawsuit had created precedent that led to real police reform in Chicago. Officer Brennan was still in prison, his appeals denied, his name synonymous with corrupt policing. The Volkov family was a memory, their empire absorbed by Jin-soo's organization or dismantled entirely. And Naomi and Jin-soo were stronger than ever. They still visited Marcus's grave regularly, still talked about him, still kept his memory alive. But they'd also learned to live again, to find joy again, to honor him by refusing to let grief consume them entirely. On this particular morning, Naomi woke to find Jin-soo already awake, watching her with an expression she'd learned to recognize over 5 years of marriage. "What?" she asked, smiling. "I was just thinking about the first time I saw you," he said. "How I knew instantly that you were going to change my life. Best decision you ever made, walking into my restaurant." "Second best," he corrected. "The best was convincing you to marry me." She laughed, that full, genuine laugh that he'd worked so hard to restore after Marcus's death. "You didn't have to convince me very hard." "True. You were quite eager to become Mrs. Kim. Can you blame me? Look at you." He pulled her close, kissing her thoroughly. "Look at us," he corrected. "Look at what we built together. The foundation, the businesses, this life. We did that. Together. "You and me against the world," Naomi murmured. "Always," Jin-soo promised. "Always." And as they came together in the morning light, their bodies speaking that wordless language they'd perfected over years of love and loss and triumph, Naomi thought about how far they'd come. From that first meeting in her restaurant to this moment, they'd survived everything life threw at them. A racist cop had tried to break her at her lowest moment. Her husband had shown him that justice could be swift, thorough, and absolutely devastating. It had cost $18 million, countless hours, and a war with the Russian Mafia. But in the end, they'd won. They'd won their justice, won their peace, and most importantly, they'd won their future together. And that, Naomi thought as Jin-soo whispered words of love against her skin, that was worth everything. Thank you so much for watching today's story, beautiful people. I hope this touched your heart the way it touched mine putting it together for you. Remember, love is powerful, justice is necessary, and never underestimate what a couple can accomplish when they fight together. If you enjoyed this, you know what to do: subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends who need to hear this story. I'm sending you all so much love this Christmas season and always. Until next time, stay blessed, stay loved, and remember, you're worthy of someone who would move heaven and earth for you. Peace.